There's a famous scene from the television sitcom Friends in which Chandler and Rachel are trying to help Ross save some money by moving a couch up the stairwell of his apartment. In my creative, business, and personal life, I've learned how important it is to pivot when I hit a wall. Structuring my work environment to allow me the flexibility to change course when necessary, and how crucial it is to offer myself some grace and kindness when I don't measure up to my own expectations. I'll talk about all of this and give you an update on this week's progress in this episode of Welcome to the Million Words Project Update for Week 6. I'm Eric Sheridan Wyatt, author, writing instructor, and creativity coach. I've challenged myself to write 1 million words in 12 months. Each week I'm going to give an update on my progress and share some of the ups and downs of this challenge. Along the way, I'll share some things I've learned and am often still learning about my writing life, about creativity in general, and sometimes even things that spill over into other areas of life. My hope is that these videos will ignite your creativity, light your entrepreneurial fire, or otherwise inspire you to take on a challenge you've been putting on the back burner for far too long. In pursuit of your big thing, small steps lead to big results. By sharing some of my path, I hope to encourage you too. So let's start this week's journey. Well, it was bound to happen sometime, but here I am, sharing with you the first weekly result that fell below the weekly target of 20,000 new words. This week's total was about 19,400 words, and this was an odd week creatively. Last Friday, I had been told by a project editor that a ghostwriting client I've been waiting on was ready to proceed. And based on that new information, I had blocked out considerable time for that work. I'd planned to write about 8,000 words this week and another 4,000 next week for that project. However, as Monday rolled around, the editor let me know that the client hadn't paid the next installment for the project, and therefore I wasn't yet given a green light to move forward. Obviously, this changed the trajectory of the entire week, and I needed to recalibrate. From left to right, you'll see the journaling category was back on in the normal zone or close to it. I did some work on a nonfiction essay as demonstrated in the next column. I rewrote the last couple paragraphs of a different client's final draft of his ghostwritten book in the client projects column, though 200 words is far from the 8,000 I had budgeted for that column this week. And finally, despite my pledge last week to rein in the life document work, my weekly total popped up above 13,000 words again last week. That's about double where I wanted to be, but it was also where I was feeling a lot of energy and flow, given the unexpected turn the week took. So I allowed myself to indulge a little bit. Additionally, I was still reeling a bit from the prior week's major shift in routine, and I had several non-writing tasks that had been neglected, which I had to make up. I was also going through a bit of a struggle to decide about this entire Million Words project, trying to decide if it would be worth the effort that was being put into it. And while I'm not completely sure the answer to that is yes, you'll notice I'm still here, and I'm still planning to keep up the series. All in all, I ended up about 600 words below the weekly target of 20,000 new words written. Now, at the end of last week, I was 11,000 words ahead of pace overall, so 1 week of missing out on hitting the target is negligible. While it's not a big deal to miss the target this week, let that be a warning bell to not get too comfortable and think, this 20,000 word thing is so easy. For this week's topic, I want to talk about a few of the mindsets I employ as I push forward into the second month of counting my words, and hopefully those are some ideas you will find applicable to your life as well. So let's dive in. One of the possible outcomes in setting a goal or challenging myself to doing something like writing 20,000 new words every week is that I might miss the mark. Now, for a big thing goal, that kind of failure might be a major disappointment. For something like this Million Words project, it is important for me to keep things in perspective. I missed the target this week, and honestly, that's okay. When I was deciding on how to re-energize my writing life and creative life, I knew I wanted a challenge that was a stretch but still achievable. And since this is a long-term challenge with a year's worth of data points on the horizon, I also knew, well, there would be weeks when I was up and down weeks. I've been watching a lot of videos of rocket launches lately, from the Apollo moon missions to archival space shuttle footage, to the more recent efforts by NASA and SpaceX. I'm fascinated by how intricate the whole process is. From concept to design to construction to testing and liftoff, thousands of people spend millions of man-hours to get a somewhat safe, semi-reliable rocket off the ground. And then when in flight, computers and people are scouring data to make sure the flight is going as planned and attempting to spot the smallest inconsistency that might cause a catastrophic failure. Supercomputers and specialists pore over hundreds of data feeds, the telemetry data, trying to assess the success of the flight. The main purpose of the Million Words project is to provide me with telemetry about my rocket ship of a writing life. Okay, that analogy is a little grandiose, but I know that studying the data of my writing life helps me know what's happening now and has provided me with historical comparisons. It helps me know myself, and it helps me measure in real time what is actually happening. To go back to the strained rocket analogy for one more second, there are lots of things that happen during a rocket launch that look from the outside like something really bad is happening. I remember the space shuttle used to have these paper covers that gave some small amount of protection to some external sensors while it was sitting on the launch pad, but then during liftoff, those papers would come flying off. From a certain angle, it looked like large sheets of insulation were flying off the orbiter, and after Challenger, that was something that even us commoners knew was a bad thing. But those paper sheets were harmless. They just looked dangerous. In my writing life, there are all sorts of things that might make it seem like I'm not writing enough or not writing the right things or otherwise not making progress. The data I'm collecting here in the Million Words project is one of the ways I have of understanding what I'm actually seeing. Is it a paper cover or part of the all-important heat shielding that's being stripped away? The conclusions I draw are only as good as the data I collect. Could I have written 600 more words at 11 p.m. on Saturday night just so I wouldn't miss my weekly goal? Probably. But the weekly target is not really what's important. What's important is reinvigorating my writing life and then finding balance in how I am applying myself to the half dozen or so big thing objectives I hope to yet accomplish in this life. This isn't about ticking off boxes and giving myself gold stars. Yeah, it's rewarding every week when I pass that 20,000 word mark and I can let down my guard a little bit. But I also know that negative data can inform me of what's actually going on. Knowing what is actually going on is much more important than fudging the numbers and thereby lying to myself. There are a couple of concepts I try to keep in mind about this project. First one is that this Million Words challenge is a tool, not an end result. I want to push to meet that challenge while keeping my actual big picture goals in mind. Second, I know that in a year-long challenge like this, I need to keep two words in mind: grace and pace. Grace is the grace to cut myself some slack, accept a missed target, and assess what can work better next week. Pace is the idea that over a long haul, there will be weeks where 20,000 words feels like a picnic and other weeks where it feels nearly impossible. But if I keep up a steady attack, this challenge is doable. Third, flexibility in attitude and in process can really help, especially in my situation where I have multiple, diverse, long-term projects I am working towards. Knowing how and when to pivot is really important. Assessing the data I collect each week and knowing my own personal work habits, strengths, and weaknesses, I can pivot. So when my client work got pushed back, I had other objectives to pursue. But also looking at the data collected so far over 6 weeks, I realized I needed to be more proactive about the balance of my weekly work. I need to pivot towards what is important. Over the coming weeks, I will be more mindful of the big picture goals and adjust my focus accordingly. Finally, given all these thoughts, I know for certain that no matter how well planned and how structured I try to make my life, there will inevitably be a week or a month where nothing goes as planned. So I know that I should accumulate words ahead of the normal pace whenever I can. That way, I can miss the mark every now and then and still be on track for writing 1 million new words in 1 year. This is especially true when I find myself in a flow state, cranking out words in that mystical, almost spiritual in-between state where I'm wrestling words and co-opting my subconscious to create something unexpected. And thankfully, with renewed focus on my writing, that flow state is visiting more often. Of course, if I were talking about missing out on a bigger goal or a creative objective and I failed at, something that I failed at, that's maybe something I want to spend a little more time mourning. I've had plenty of ideas that never panned out, and even a few things I really had my heart set on achieving, but for various reasons, some out of my control and sometimes due to my own failures, those things did not come to pass. I'm not going to tell you that failure is always easy to just brush it off. But I know that when I fail at one thing, it doesn't do anyone any good, especially myself, if I wallow in that defeat. Mourn the loss and, well, yes, pivot to something else. Abraham Maslow, who you may know as the developer of the idea of a hierarchy of needs, the hierarchy of needs, has been quoted as saying, "In any given moment, we have two options, to step forward into growth or to step back into safety." One of the hardest things to do when things don't go according to plan is to adapt and work toward your desired result anyway. It's far easier to shrug and turn to Netflix or go eat a whole box of donuts. Those are just two personal examples. Sometimes we will go for the easy route. I know I do, more often than I'd care to admit. But with every setback, there's a choice. Do nothing or pivot back towards what matters. Doing nothing depresses me. Pursuing what matters is where I find energy in life. Maybe you've been in a period of stuckness in the past. Maybe you find yourself in one now. It could be that your old systems and methods aren't working, or maybe you've never quite found the right path to build momentum in pursuit of your big thing. Maybe the thing you thought you wanted to accomplish wasn't the right project to go after at all. Maybe the circumstances of life have seemingly conspired against you. If you find yourself in the position of feeling you've lost too much time, gotten too far behind, or wasted good opportunities, I would like to encourage you to acknowledge those feelings and then pivot back in the direction you want to go. Unless Elon Musk is working on time travel in addition to his other ventures, we are probably stuck with the past. But we can still make the pivot back towards what matters today and tomorrow and the next day. Even if it's just a little step each day or twice a week, those efforts can add up. Small steps lead to big results. As we start to wrap up, let me give you a point to ponder this week. I'd like you to write about a time when you pivoted. It doesn't have to be related to creativity or your big thing project that's full of meaning and purpose. It doesn't have to have been an heroic effort. It could have been as simple as getting all dressed up for the big anniversary dinner and finding out the restaurant where you and your beloved had your first date is now a Halloween costume store. So you decided to start a new anniversary tradition. You bought a couple of costumes and got a burger dressed as Cleopatra and Caesar. The important thing is identifying an incident in your life where you were flexible, where you made the most of a bad situation, where you rescued success from the jaws of defeat. Just write it out like you're telling a story. Use dialogue, build up to a climax, describe the setting, all those things. It doesn't need to be Pulitzer worthy. This is just for you, but I want you to add at least a little flavor to the project. After you have a little narrative, go back and think about how you made the pivot. What qualities or skills did you utilize? And then for another couple of minutes, write about yourself in the third person and describe yourself through the lens of those qualities. It may just be a few sentences, or you may find that you're writing more than you thought you would. Just let your pen or keyboard fingers run free and see what comes out. That's all for week 6. If you watched this far, I'm hoping that means you got something useful out of this video. For independent artists and creators like myself, it's important that viewers or readers interact with our content. That makes it more likely to find its way to others. So if you wouldn't mind, please like, subscribe, and do all the good things. You can ask a question or give a rebuttal to my ramblings or offer some encouragement in the comments section. It's all very much appreciated. And most importantly, if you know someone in your life who might benefit from this video series, send them a link and invite them to join us, won't you? If you are joining this video series partway through and want to know what is going on, who I am, and what this Million Words Project is all about, you'll find a link to the first episode which can answer those questions. Until next time, remember, your words matter. Make them count.
Oh, now what did you mean when you said pivot?